Hello and welcome back to a series of tutorials on Rawbots, the robot building game. I am Mike at Nearly Enough Dice, and I shall be your host for this little quick tutorial. What we're going to do in this one is we're going to remake this here basic bot. So that should tell us a little bit about bot building and coding. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make another little hex for our new bot to live on. So I'm going to hold down the 6 key, and that'll bring up the terraforming menu. And as you can see, as I move my mouse over the various edges of this little hex here, I can place a new hex, and there we go. There's more stuff I can do with terraforming. I'll probably do something on terraforming later. But for now, we're going to build ourselves a bot. And obviously the first thing you need to do is make your bot bits. And as you see, you've got 3 of these blocks, 3 continuums, as they are called. You have 4 motors, 4 wheels, and a camera. Right, so let's make those. So holding down the control key, left click, 1, 2, 3 continuums. Let's see, wheels. Now there are actually 3 different types of wheel, and so it happens these are wide wheels, small. So I have 4 of those, and they will fall off into space. So I shall just get a 4th one there. I was trying to be too clever, having them all kind of stacked up on one another, but that didn't work very well, did it? You fall over. Don't you go anywhere. I should have possibly made a bit more territory, but hey. Camera and motors. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make a little bit more space. And if I was particularly clever, I'd make walls, but I don't think I'm going to. Click. 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 There we go. Okay, now I explained the basics of connecting things in my previous tutorial. Holding down the 1 key, click on an object, and click on the second object. You can change the attachment point. Boom. So now they're connected. So these 2 are now connected in the same way that these 2 are connected here. But there's this little voltaic gap, voltaic link as they call them. So how do you make those, you ask yourselves? Well, I shall show you. Well, first I'm going to basically need to get your 2 items. I'm going to join this cube to this cube with a gap in the middle. But I've joined them together like this so that they are nicely lined up. Now hold down the 0 key. I'm going to click the one in the middle. That detaches it. I'm going to move it out the way. I might have to have another go at that. Let's move everything over here so I can be a bit more. There are ways and means of doing this. In making, basically, when you create the voltaic link, they will forever be attached in whatever angle and whatever position they ended up in. So you have to kind of be careful and get things lined up exactly how you want it. And there are ways and means of doing this, and I'm trying currently to do it without making things specifically just to be scaffold, because that's one way of doing it. You actually kind of build other things. Oh, there we go. Like playing Jenga. Okay, so we're going to make a voltaic arc between these 2 here. Okay, and they're going to become that there. Hold down the 2 key this time. Now, again, you click on it. You choose which attachment point by right-clicking. Then you click on the second one And these has very conveniently come up with the correct join point, but most of the time that doesn't happen. So you'll have to click through. Now you notice that mousing over doesn't change it for this particular type of link. So it's right click. Okay. I often find it very difficult to tell the difference sometimes because it's they is that pointing down? Is that pointing this way? It's just moving the camera around helps you very much in working out where everything is. So I'm now happy. I now left click on the second block, and there they are. They're now joined, and so I can move them around like that. Boop-a-doo. Okay. So I'm just going to do a standard join for that. And there's the wheel bouncing up in the background. And join camera onto... Okay, now, what I've just noticed, as you can see here, there's this light bit is pointing upwards, and it's on the side here, which means that camera's on the side. If I do a shift and then... Oops, get out of that. If I do a shift and then tab, it will take me to that... I'm now locked to that second camera, which is actually kind of convenient. But if I now hit tab, everything's on its side. That's bad. Don't want that. So I'm going to have to fix that. So 0 to detach the camera. 0, click. 1 to put it back on again. What you can't see very well, because the camera is obviously round, it's kind of hard to tell that you can rotate it. So I'm just going to hit right click on the camera. Some very subtle changes happen there, but now it's the right way up. It's much easier to see with like blocky things, such as the continuums, but hey. Okay, next step, let's add some motors on. Hold down 1, click, keep holding 1, click. Sometimes the physics of joining them up gets a bit energetic. I'm just going to move around here so I can actually get a look at the thing I want to look at. There you go, bonk. So that way, that is how I make sure that I can get them onto the right attachment point, because I don't want them sticking up there, because that would be silly. There we go. And before that wheel gets away, I'm going to attach it. Now you notice I don't have to do anything fancy with mousing over attachment points on these motors, because they only have 2, and one of them is obviously already connected to that continuum, so I don't have any choices to make. So there you go. We have now physically replicated our starting bot. Now, I'm just going to shift tab back to our starting bot, because obviously, now that we've made it physically, we wanted to make it behave the same. So W, S, A, D. So I want to be able to do that in the new bot. So again, shift tab, new bot. So, how are we going to do this? Well, obviously we're going to do some coding. And obviously, it's all going to be in the motor. So hit escape, and I'm now in the console. Now I'm going to click on this motor, and that brings up the motor tile. And I put all the motors over here. Now I'm going to put all the motors along here, but I'm going to group the ones on each side together. So holding on shift, click again, then I can just drag that over here. Give it a bit of space. Shift, click, shift click, and there we go. Now right control click to bring up all the tiles associated with a motor, and what we're going to use is velocity. Velocity is how fast it spins. Now I demonstrate by setting a value, but then our little robot would careen off the cliff and never be seen again, because I haven't bothered to make walls. So there you go. Okay, so we're going to need to add some outputs that go into these inputs, right? And that's going to be controlled by keys. So that needs a keyboard listener, or an input sampler as it is called. So there you go. Now I'm going to have one input sampler for the W and S keys, and I'm going to have another sampler for the A and D keys for left and right. Doop doop. So let's set up this one first. Positive. Well, positive, I want positive to be forwards, and forwards is W. So I bring that out, click on it, change the value down here, boom. W will now be positive. Negative, exact same thing, click on it, come down here, negative is S, so there you go. Attack and release. Attack and release are effectively how quickly the value goes up and how quickly it goes back down to 0 again. So there's the sample, that's the output. So I'm going to hit W, and you'll see that it goes up until it hits 0. I'm going to hit S, and it goes down until it hits -1. And then when I release it, it goes back to 0. And if I give it an attack of 0.1, for example, it goes up much more slowly. But it goes back down the same rate because the release is still the default. The default is 1, by the way. So that just acts the exact same way. Now, let's see. I can just add that to the outputs, because I can just do that. Okay, and so now these, when I hit W, these two will get positive velocity. Okay, now two things. One, it's not going forward, it's going backwards. And two, it's going really slowly. Really slowly. Turns out a velocity of 1's kind of slow. And the other thing is, because the motor goes clockwise with a positive velocity value, the wheels on this side, or the motors on this side particularly, when they turn clockwise, because they're on this side, they're going to drive everything backwards. The motors on this side, when they go clockwise, will drive everything forwards. So obviously I need to be a bit clever about what I add where. So I need to do two things. I need to make sure that this is 0 to 1 value that comes out the sample. Sorry, -1 to +1 value. My apologies. We need to make sure that that actually has a sensible range for motors in a wheeled vehicle capacity. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and click on Sample, and that immediately disconnects it from everything. If I Control Shift and click again, it actually disappears completely. But I don't want that. I actually want it to be out in the world. So this is a sample mapper, and what this is going to do is actually going to solve both our problems. It's got outputs of mapped and inverted, and we have mapped min and mapped max. Okay, so what these are the upper and the lower and upper values that are going to come out of this. So if I put, say, 10 and -10, it'll go from -10 to +10, depending on what this sample is. You can define sample min and sample max as well if you want. That's if you happen to know that the values are going to be from a particular value to another particular value. Now the default is 1 and -1, which happens to be the exact range this already has. So you probably don't actually need that out, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to give this a value of 8 and minus 8. Okay, so now instead of ranging from 0 to 1, instead of ranging from minus 1 to plus 1, it's going to range from minus 8 to plus 8. Obviously, I can put any values I like here. If I want it to range from 0 to whatever and only ever go positive, then I can do that. And if I've got some other completely different input, then I can change the sample max and sample min. Sample is obviously where it comes in, mapped and inverted is where it comes out. So I'm just going to, now that I've done that, I've now connected that in here. So if I press W, that goes up to 1, that goes up to 8. Now going to minus 1, that's now minus 8 in mapped and 8 in inverted. So that gives me what I want. I want these two motors to be negative when I'm going forwards. I want these two motors to be positive when I'm going forwards. So I'm just going to swap those round, just visually. So mapped goes to the velocity of these two. Inverted goes to the velocity of these two. Ba-dump. So now, W, S. Backwards and forwards. Hurrah! Now, it's lefty-righty time. How shall we do this? Well, let's start by setting up our keyboard thingy. And I'm just going to leave out release and attack. I'm just going to leave release and attack in the default values. So I'm actually not going to bring them out at all. So positive A, negative D. So there you go, A, D. Changing the sample value. Obviously I'm going to be doing some mapping. So I'll bring out another sample mapper. I won't bring out sample min and sample max because I know that the default values will do fine. So I'll bring out sample so I can actually connect. And mapped min and mapped max. Where's mapped max? There we go. And inverted and mapped. Just chuck those there. And I'm going to set them to the same max and min. Okay. And connect to the input sampler. So now, there we go. Da, 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 da. That's fine. Okay, so it goes up to 8 and minus 8. Okay, so what do I actually want to happen when I do this? When I hit A, I want the thing to go to the left, which means I want those going forwards and those going backwards. Well, as we worked out before, clockwise, as in positive velocity, sends these ones forwards and these ones backwards. So I want to send mapped to each of these. Okay. So when I hit A, I'm going to get a positive result, which will turn the thing that way. When I hit S, it's going to become negative, and it'll go the other way. So I actually don't need the inverted tile at all. That's a bit quick, actually. But there you go. That's the basic functionality of that starting bot, made from scratch. Now that should give you some ideas to start off with. Maybe make your own bot. Try different configurations. Try different methods of steering. One example that you could use is, instead of using what's known as skid steering, what you could do, for example, is put this continuum under a motor, and then that one. So underneath the body, that's on a motor, and will turn left and right, and so you have steering that way. You could even have four-wheel steering by having two motors to do your steering. Lots of other different possibilities. So I encourage you to have a bit of a play and see what you can come up with. Now, obviously, once you've made your first bot and you're extremely proud of it, you're going to want to save it for posterity. So, if you hold down the 4 key and then click on your bot and then release the mouse button and the 4 key, you give your thing a name. So I'm going to call mine basic bot. And it's now saved the blueprint BP basic bot. That means if I hold down the Control and Shift key and then I get this little blue spark on the landscape and then I left click and then release everything, you can tab to go through the bots that are available to you. I seem to have made quite a lot of bots. It's in here somewhere. And you just keep hitting tab until you've got to your basic bot. You can now move the mouse around and that's where it's going to spawn. Left click and there you go. So once you've made a bot, you can make a copy and make as many of them as you like. Make your own little bot army. Okay. I think that should be enough for now. Do have fun, make your own bots, see what you can come up with. The point of this game is to be as creative as you can be. Okay, this has been Mike at Nearly Enough Dice, showing you how to play Rawbots. Do visit nearlyenoughdice.com for all your geeky podcasting needs, and visit rawbots.net to learn more about Rawbots. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again later.